Hey, welcome to my show. And today we're going to be talking about a problem that you may run into with the operation of steam boilers isolation valves. This is a half-inch red-white valve, model number 5549AB, which was put in by others some time ago. I'm going to say at least 10 years ago. And probably what happened here was that when it was initially installed, got a little overheated and it damaged the seal, and so there was a slight passing internally, which wasn't enough to cause problems. But what happened was that there was a mineral buildup. This is the downstream side, and you can see on the ball there some crustiness, and the outer white rim there is the PTFC seal. This is the inlet side. You can see that there is still a little bit of shininess on the ball. This is a new valve of the same model. It's got a red handle on it, which is the later version. And let me shut it. And you can see the ball is nice and shiny. So at some point, someone came along and operated the valve, and when they operated the valve, the grit that's on the ball ground away on the seal and caused the slight leak to become a bigger leak, and the boiler started flooding, sometimes only taking a couple of days in order to add enough water that the water was squirting out of the main vents in the basement. So the boiler had to be drained. Fortunately, the upstream valve held, and we were able to come back and work on it. Now, the first thing that happens usually if a system floods is that generally the automatic fill valve is blamed. And a lot of times that is indeed the case. This is your automatic fill valve. I've seen this is featured in other videos. This is the S45 on the VXT. And you can rebuild this, then you turn the system back on and the system still floods. So what happens is that this is the one that's passing. Even though it's shut, you got to make sure, sometimes it's user error. If this is not fully closed, that would also cause it to leak. But when that's eliminated, then this has got to be suspected. And you got to make this, take this into account. Sweat ball valves are a problem in that once they took the lead out, they required more heat, which damages the seal. This particular one, this particular model caused me problems. I put one in when we had a passing valve, and I replaced it with this model, and it leaked right out of the box. I literally was able to put a mark on the sight glass and see that the water level rose in about an hour, and that then was a clear indication that this valve had failed, and I went ahead and put in the red-white valve, which is, I think, more robust. This is a 200 grams. This is 155 grams. The CV ratio on this, the amount of water that can pass, is a 10, even though it's a full port. The CV ratio on this is 15, as you can see on the spec sheet. This is the spec sheet there with the seals and so forth. Most ball valves are built on the same pattern as the ball, the stem, and the seal and so forth, and the valve body being in two pieces. So you got to be careful about that. One thing I tried to do was I did an experiment on using an ultrasonic stethoscope. I had a VPE 1000 Accutrak, which I bought 20 years ago, and you can see there as I rub the probe, the the system responds. There's a jack here. You can listen to the hiss of the sound of the ultrasonics. And when I put my probe on the end, the downstream side, I could hear a hiss. And when I put it on the VXT downstream side, I did not hear the same hiss. And so it was pretty clear that this was leaking. This is pretty expensive. I don't know how much it costs now, but it was, I saw a number, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it was pretty high. I was also got a chance to test this ultrasonic probe type, marketed by Spyrex Sarco back in the 80s. This is no longer made, more's the pity, because this, here's the probe on the end. I'm going to go ahead and rub it and squeeze the trigger. That's all I'm doing, is just rubbing it, causing the little friction on my fingers, causing a little ultrasonic there. Too bad, because that seemed to actually perform better than the Accutraks. The Accutraks, I've been very disappointed in the Accutrak's performance. Well, the main issue also is that most of the time when these valves are installed, they're installed in the open position and are only closed when you have to work on something downstream, and then you just open them back up again, and that's usually good enough. When I first ran into this problem over 20 years ago, it was a Nibco valve, and it was the only valve on the system. There was no automatic valve, so it was, you could pretty well narrow it down, but I just couldn't wrap my head around that a ball valve was actually passing. It was fully shut. You didn't see any water rise, and when you cut the pipe downstream between the outlet of the valve and the boiler, there was no water running. There was no water dripping at all. But when I sweated it back up and put it back into service, 48 hours later, the boiler was flooding again. So the only way to solve it was to install a valve downstream. That way I didn't have to shut off the whole house, because it was shutting off. This was shutting off enough to be able to solder up a new valve. And I was able to solve the problem that way, and that was a lesson learned. Doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's very frustrating, because sometimes you have to make a couple of trips to nail it down. So I hope that helps. And if you have any experiences or questions, please leave it below, and stay safe and happy steaming.